This is a fun category. This is where we pick something that we think 10, 20, 30 years from now will still be talked about and will still be discussed. So you're basically trying to figure out what product from 2017 is still going to be discussed the most decades from now. And so with that in mind, Matt, what is your pick for Future Legend of 2017?
Mine's a little bit of a cheat because it has the word in it, but it's the Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
I think this game gets a little more credit than it deserves in terms of innovation because it's really just synthesizing stuff that other games have been doing for years. But it struck a chord. I think it's going to be very influential. I think you're going to start seeing shrines pop up in open world games in about a year and a half from now.
Think?
Yeah, I think the way this world was put together is going to be very strongly influential about how people put stuff together in the future. Which is kind of vindicating because the guys who are credited for a lot of the open world stuff in this game are the people who made Xenoblade Chronicles 1, which also had an amazing world, and like you can see that pedigree in this game. And it's nice to kind of see that recognized, even if it took it being in another series for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, this made a really strong impression, not just on gamers, but on developers. You run into developers who are just constantly talking about, like, oh my God, I want my game to have this and this and this. And I think you're going to see a lot of the lessons of this game crop up in the next 10 years of game. Zelda games, a really good Zelda game can influence the industry for decades to come. And we still talk about Ocarina, and I think this is as kind of revolutionary and fresh as Zelda's gotten since Ocarina. And I feel like people are still going to talk about what this game did, and going to talk about this game as a starting point for design ideas, even 10 to 15 years from now.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. I really do. I think that this game just borrows pretty much everything from other games that we've been playing.
Oh, I agree, but I think that doesn't matter.
You think people are going to say Zelda was the one that did it?
I think people are going to give this game credit for it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not saying I believe it. I believe that it did all that. I'm going to say that people are going to, because we're talking about, are people going to talk about it? And
right.
They are. Like, they already do. That people are going to consider this game to be the genesis of a bunch of things it was not the genesis of. But that doesn't mean they aren't still talking about it.
See, I thought about picking this when I thought about a bunch of games for this category. And what I thought it ultimately made me not pick this game for this award was that I think once we're at the third or fourth open world Zelda game, that it's just going to become rote. And they're not going to talk about this game because I think people are going to realize, yeah, it was revolutionary for a Zelda game, but for all video games?
No one's going to realize that.
Really?
That's the Nintendo effect. No one's going to realize it. And even if they...
Well, this was my award, damn it.
I think you may be right in that, like, once you get to the third or fourth open world Zelda, people will find it to be old hat. But then they'll say it's not fresh and new like it was with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like, Breath of the Wild is going to be a bulletproof game for a very, very long time, I predict.
I mean, let's be honest. Like, any award you could have given to this game would make it easier on you after you give out the awards, because
I mean, let me be clear. I am giving it this in a cynical manner.
Right.
Like
right.
I'm not trying to argue against what you're saying about this game because I agree with all that. I just think, like, in terms of sort of the overall zeitgeist and the overall conversation that will be had about this game going forward, no one's going to care except us.
Yeah.
It's I'm not saying it's right, but I think that is what's going to happen.
Well, only time will tell.
Yeah.
Literally, with this category, only time will tell.
And to be honest, like,
that's the best part about this award. Nobody can hold it over your head for 10 years.
My other pick that I was trying to decide between was your pick.
Okay.
So it's like, I think we're kind of on the same page here. I'm just a little more. I just have less faith.
You're more realistic, honestly. I'm more idealistic. You're more realistic. I think.
Hope you're right.
Yeah.
But I don't think you are.
We'll see in 10 years. My pick for Future Legend is Cuphead. Because in my opinion, this game is actually innovative and is different and something like we've never really seen before. I can't remember another game that looked like this. I mean, I honestly can't remember another game that plays like this. Can you?
Well, I mean,
there's lots of side-scrolling shooters.
Yeah, bullet hell shooters. There's a little bit of the old Disney games to it, like Quackshot and Castle of Illusion, although it's more shooting and less jumping.
You see this game, you never forget it.
Yeah.
And I think anytime a game, and I think there will be eventually clones of this game, maybe they're not as challenging.
If anybody's got the balls to take that on, I mean,
right? Because it was a Herculean task for them to create this game. But I think it's going to be imitated, and I think anytime somebody does anything even close to it, they're going to be like, also like Cuphead. And I think this could end up becoming that new, so like this type of. And I don't think that's what I'm saying about Zelda. I don't think when somebody looks at an open world game, they're going to be like, like Breath of the Wild, unless you're talking about some of the more physics-based stuff, because that to me is the one unique thing about Breath of the Wild, is how you can just fiddle with the physics and the objects that they give you and create with them, like how people made like the flying like ships and everything. That, to me, is a unique selling proposition of Zelda. That's what makes it unique. But the rest of it is really just...
To make anyone say, it's like Breath of the Wild, all you're ever going to need to do is add a stamina meter.
Oh.
That's all. You climb a thing and add a stamina meter, which, by the way, was done in Shadow of the Colossus in 2004.
Well, lots of games have had it for climbing.
Right, but if you're going to like directly say, like, where did that come from? It comes from Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
And it is still fun, but it doesn't come from Zelda. However, Zelda could be the thing that gives the influence that adds that into other games. And
look, I don't deny. I think Zelda will get credit for stuff it doesn't deserve, because in all honesty, a lot of people who play Zelda haven't played a lot of these other games, Matt.
Oh yeah.
If they've been living on Nintendo platforms all this time, they haven't played a lot of games like this. So
I like
sure,
that.
to them,
you just saw a nice little example of that where he threw the bomb in the heat of the enemy. I made it fly up.
Yeah.
And it didn't get hit by the bomb.
Yep. I mean, that's the cool thing about Zelda, is how all these little like elemental things and physics things all play together to make a believable world. But the actual design and structure of Zelda is ripped straight out of Skyrim or dozens of other action RPGs.
And really, you could argue that Skyrim is also based around kind of playing with the world in the same way. It's just not quite as satisfying because
it was made like
it was made a long time ago,
but
but also because Zelda's got more polish on that element. I mean, part of Skyrim's fun is how ridiculous all the glitches are, and the one, the Cyclops guy will, he hits you with the hammer and you fly into orbit and all. I mean, that's part of the charm of Skyrim, or part of the reason you hate Skyrim, depending on who you are. This Zelda obviously has a lot more. Everything's a lot more reliable. Let's say, like, it feels like the world works the way it works because that's how the world is supposed to work, and not how like that's where Gamebryo broke.
Right. It's just it doesn't feel like a glitch in Zelda. It feels like, hey, they actually may have fiddled with this in testing and said, hey, can we build like an airship using these two enemies and a couple logs? And then they figured out, yes, you can do that. Now let's sit back and wait and see how long it takes for the players to discover it. Yeah. So, look, that is the one thing I do give Zelda credit for, is that's one part of the game that really hasn't been done a lot in other games. But when you start talking about the core design of it, it's something that we've seen many, many times before.
Well, I agree, but I just don't think that's not a perspective anyone's going to care about. Before.
Well, I think the other thing too is that it's going to be Nintendo fans trumpeting this game in 10 years, and a lot of them haven't even played other games like this if they've only had Nintendo platforms. So
whereas I think if Cuphead's talked about it, it'll be like, man, you remember that crazy animated game that no one ever made anything like it again because they were all afraid to try that, like although maybe they'll make a second one. I don't know. Those guys.
I think they already said they're making another one. Yeah, but
I'd love to see them move forward in animation era, and like the next one will be like the classic kind of 40s era Disney like Fantasia.
That would be cool if they just kept jumping decade to decade until we got to like the corny cartoons of the 70s, and then like
Cuphead 6 will be like CG.
Right. That's funny.